Dr. David Perlmutter. He's a neurologist and a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. He's Dr. You hear that claim, all these grains are causing all these mental illnesses. Is this something that is tied to gluten? Is it gluten that's causing this?
Gluten is part of this story. And you know, the big gluten-free trend has traction because it has absolute merit. Our best scientists at Harvard, for example, have found that 100% of people have some degree of gluten sensitivity. And what happens to them when they consume gluten, you and I consume gluten, is it induces inflammation. Why is that important? It's important because inflammation is the cornerstone of everything you don't want to get, including the things you mentioned, Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. So people say, well, we've always eaten grains. I mean, in the Bible it says, give us this day our daily bread. The point is, that's just a blink of an eye ago. For 99.5% of our time on this planet, we ate a high-fat, gluten-free, low-carb diet. And what I'm saying is we've got to get back to that if we want a chance to preserve our health.
Now, let me ask you another question. You say that Alzheimer's can be preventable with diet. That's a pretty huge statement.
Well, it's based upon our most well-respected current literature.
Right.
The point is, it's a preventable disease. Researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, have proven and published that about 54% of Alzheimer's patients didn't have to get that disease if they would have paid attention to certain lifestyle choices.
All right, so it's Dr. David.
Dr. David Perlmutter.
We've never eaten grains. I mean, in the past couple of thousands of years we've had grains, but humans have never been on a grain-rich diet because we didn't have wheat fields. And so the science is really pretty profound now, indicating that components of certain grains, like gluten, can really turn on inflammation, and inflammation is the cornerstone of really some things you don't want to have. It's a very foreign protein, gluten, to human physiology, and it causes all kinds of issues. If people say, oh, well, we've always had our daily bread, it's in the Bible, give us this day our daily bread. But in reality, you know, we've been here for, let's say, 2.5 million years, and agriculture is just 10,000 years old. So for 99.9% of our time on the planet, we've been eating low-carb, high-fat, a gluten-free diet. So this is, you know, this thing that's just suddenly come into our diets is strange, and, you know, our health issues, a lot of them are related to this. And we've never eaten this type of food in 99.9% of the time that we've been on the planet. And everybody says, gee, what's this gluten thing all of a sudden? Is it because a tennis player, you know, improved his game because he went gluten-free? It's a real big deal, and you know, my mission is to bring the notion that gluten sensitivity is far more than a gut-related issue. It's a brain-related issue. It relates to things like depression and dementia and ADHD.
But Dr. David
Perlmutter to the show. Now, Doc, folks have been eating grains for thousands of years, and now suddenly we hear that grains are a problem. How can that be?
Well, you're right. We've been eating grains for thousands of years, and that represents about 0.01% of the time that we've been here. So, you know, in reality, for the past 2.5 million years, we haven't eaten any grain, and it's only been very, very recently that that came into our diets. And it turns out that grains, like wheat, contain a protein called gluten. And what the science is all about really focuses on the fact that gluten is toxic to the human body. Now, you know, that's something that people don't want to accept as you look down at your croissant or your bagel or whole grain toast. But in reality, the leading science that we wrote Grain Brain about really demonstrates that we don't need to have that in our diets, that in fact gluten in the diet turns on inflammation, which is the cornerstone of such dreaded things as Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
Alzheimer's is an impending epidemic. Could it be that some commonly eaten foods are the primary culprit? Hi, this is Dr. Mercola helping you take control of your health, and today we are joined by Dr. David Perlmutter, who is going to help us answer that question. He is a neurologist practicing in South Florida. One of the points that you bring up in your book is the issue with gluten, and certainly any physician who's been practicing natural medicine for any length of time has been aware of this well before your book. But I think you really have brought to the core, better than anyone I can remember, the importance of this issue. So I'm just wondering if you could expand a little bit about that and tell people what some of the signs might be that they might be suspicious that they suffer from this, and maybe even comment on the percentage of the population is affected, because I think that would be an interesting comment.
As far as the signs that you may be gluten sensitive, I would say that the simplest thing to do is if you have a vowel in your name, chances are you may well be gluten sensitive. So that kind of narrows it right down, doesn't it? The point I'm making is gluten sensitivity can manifest itself in almost any way you can imagine, from skin disorders to joint pain to dementia, depression, insomnia, ADHD. People always associate gluten sensitivity with the gut, and mainstream medicine would tell you that, if your bowel movements are good and you're not having abdominal pain, gluten sensitivity doesn't apply to you. And that just really flies in the face of what our most well-respected gluten researchers have actually published, have had these meetings in England, for example, and make publications that show us that there is something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which may involve 30 to 40% of the population, or, according to the work done at Harvard by Dr. Alessio Fasano, may in fact involve every one of us, again, everybody walking the planet, where gluten, this bizarre and very foreign protein found in wheat, barley, and rye, has some very significant effects on the cells in the gut, leading to the production of a chemical called zonulin, which enhances inflammation and tends to open up the gut, making it leaky. But what Dr. Fasano has discovered is it also can make the blood-brain barrier leaky and let proteins into the brain where they don't belong. So this is a very, very big deal. And, you and I just had a discussion on the emerging literature that's correlating gluten consumption with changes in the bacteria, changes in the microbiome, which may very well be detrimental. So
today we have Dr. David Perlmutter with us. Today he also actually has a very active practice in Florida, and you're on the faculty of the Institute of Functional Medicine, and you are a board-certified neurologist.
We now understand that factors that increase permeability of the gut lining, like, for example, exposure to the protein gliadin, which is found in foods that contain gluten, that exposure to gliadin increases permeability of the blood-brain barrier. So, yeah, it's not a good thing to have a leaky gut, but I can promise you having a leaky brain is not a picnic either. So, when you read the work of researchers like Dr. Alessio Fasano, now at Harvard, who indicates that, this notion that some people are gluten sensitive, he finds that the mechanism of gliadin, a protein found in gluten, in terms of the gut permeability through a mediator protein called zonulin, is present in 100% of humans to some degree. So why did I focus on gluten in terms of your brain's silent killers in the book Grain Brain? I focused on it because it leads to increased gut permeability, and that's what you and I have been talking about since we started today, and that is that this gut permeability is the cornerstone of just about everything bad you don't want to get.
Yes.
Inflammation mediates your risk for cancer, diabetes, heart disease, lupus, anything that you can think of that you don't want to get, aside from trauma perhaps, is basically an inflammatory condition.